Morning. It's a beautiful Thursday in early October, and today I'm in Tadcaster. It's a place I've never been walking before. I've left the bus station and crossed the bridge, heading back towards Leeds, and then immediately after crossing the bridge I've turned onto a Riverside path that's signposted Newton Kyme in 2.5 miles. It was about 5 or 6 degrees when I set off this morning. Clear blue skies, not a breath of wind. Autumn has well and truly arrived. As you leave the town, you very quickly reach countryside, past the church on the left, and about a quarter of a mile from the bridge is a weir, which you might be able to hear in the background. This is the River Wharfe, about 5 miles upstream from where it joins the River Wharfe on its journey to the North Sea. It really is glorious. A lot of the trees are still green, but clearly now they're all starting to turn into their beautiful autumn shades of golden browns and yellows. I'm standing right by the weir now and leaning against a fence, looking down on some kind of a sluice gate, an overflow mechanism, about 20-30 feet above the river. The trees around the hawthorn and willow by the weir are still in leaf, and the sun's glinting on the water as it rushes by. It is delightful, but just by my feet is a reminder of the power of this river when it's in flood. It's only a few years ago that the bridge in Tadcaster was severely damaged, almost washed away. It took a few years to rebuild, and by my feet, propped against this wrought iron fence, is the biggest tree trunk that's clearly been washed down when the river's been in flood and has come to rest. And yet another 2 or 3 feet above me is plastic wrapped in trees and debris wrapped in trees. The power must be phenomenal to cause damage like it has done and to wash entire trees ashore. There's something quite hypnotic about the sound and light this morning. Carrying on upstream away from the weir is a lovely railway viaduct. I believe it's disused now, but harks back to a time when Tadcaster was actually on the railway network. Upon leaving the weir, the valley to the left opens out, and it's quite a wide floodplain, maybe half a mile, with Tadcaster and one of its breweries in the distance. On the right bank of the river, the ground rises a little and is wooded. The river here is quite high. It has been raining a lot recently, but it's so still. It doesn't actually look as if it's flowing, and all along the bank the trees form a perfect reflection. The blue sky, clouds and birds flying across the river, all reflected. The view back across this little floodplain towards Tadcaster is gorgeous. The dew on the grass looks like a silver sheen across the valley floor. The bank here now is lowered and is sandy and falls away into the river. A mile or so after Tadcaster, there's what appears to be an old bridge structure. It doesn't cross the river, there's a track coming downhill to a stone rampart, a little tunnel through for the footpath, and then on where the actual bridge was, what looks like a stone arch that's fallen down. It's not shown on the map. And go through the tunnel now. I'm not sure what it was. There's a quarry up to my left, or a disused quarry. Maybe it was something to do with that. I'm not quite sure where I'm heading today, as I've never done this walk before, but I think I'll probably go to the village of Newton Kyme, 4 miles upstream, and then just beyond there is a bridge marked on the map. Not sure if you can cross the river by it, but I think I'll go as far as there and check. If I can cross the river, I'll do so, and then try and make my way back to Tadcaster down the opposite bank. The banking on my left has now got quite a bit steeper and is covered in trees, and all that dew that was forming the blanket on the valley floor is now dripping from the trees, cold and refreshing. The valley here on the left is now very broad, very flat, and the names hark back in history, I guess. I've passed through S'mores, Ings, now walking in Bond, Ings. Large, flat areas bordered by trees, ditches and drainage channels, and I'm guessing a natural defence for places like Tadcaster when the river's in flood. I've headed away from the riverbank now towards the village of Newton Kyme. There's a little path that seems to skirt the village and the church. I've just passed through a gate and there is an absolutely enormous oak tree. It must be 12-15 feet around its girth, and its upper branches are 2 and 3 feet in diameter. It's quite stunning, really. Must be hundreds and hundreds of years old. 3, maybe 400 years. It's beautiful. I'm not sure a podcast can do justice to a tree like this. I've just passed the tiny church at Newton Kyme on my left hand side, and next to it is a very impressive looking Newton Kyme Hall with its little deer trench in front of it, and I forget the name, but it's a stone wall at the bottom of a trench with a slope down to stop the deer getting into the grounds. Now I'm coming off the church drive and into the village, and it's the first time I've been here, and it seems to have some very grand old houses. The only thing I really know about Newton Kyme is that it used to have, or maybe still does have, a paper mill called Papyrus. I have a little bit of road walking now through the village to the main Tadcaster Boston Spa road, and then I drop down once again to the river. What a sleepy little place this is. It's kind of in a cul-de-sac. You come down to it from the main road and there's no access beyond the village due to the river. Just past the sign for the River Wharfe. I'm at the main road now. Tadcaster 1 1/4 miles to my left, Boston Spa 1.5 to my right, Weatherby 5. That's from a modern signpost, but directly in front of me is a milestone. That tells me I'm on the Tadcaster and Otley Road at Newton Kyme. And another sign tells me Newton Kyme is half a mile behind me. There's a nice footpath at the side of this road and I'm jolly glad, so everybody is zooming along. I think I walk about half a mile towards Boston Spa and then the River Wharfe goes down a track on the right and back to the river. In the distance, way to the right, I can see the Thorpe Arch Trading Estate, series of low-lying industrial buildings that was, I think, first developed as some kind of munitions depot in one of the world wars, but later became a shopping complex and used for all kinds of different purposes. There's also a couple of prisons situated there. There's a tractor in the field just to my right, tilling the soil, getting it ready for sowing of a new crop. Harvest time is also a time of getting the new crops ready for next year. I think it is quite a high hedge here, so I can't really see over, but I think he is actually sowing seeds. Has a big hopper on the back and a large rake type implement on the front. I've left the road now and I'm walking down a road track with hedges at either side. And the field on the left, in the field on the left, the map shows there's the remains of a Roman fort. I'm starting to drop down once again towards the riverbank. Once again very close to the river as there's a 5-foot high pile of debris, trees and scrub across the path where the floodwaters reached on the last occasion the river burst its banks. It's very lush down here, very overgrown. I'm sure there is a path. This might even be it. It's a big sycamore tree just opposite. Half of it's gone golden yellow, the other half of it's still green. And a cormorant that I hadn't seen in the river just in front of it. I think it may have been underwater, the cormorant fishing. Came up, saw me, and flew off. The ripples now from where the bird was, moving further out. And the light on the tree trunk opposite, shimmering with the reflection of the ripples. Away to my right, looking downstream, I can see Newton Kyme church in the distance. Surprising how far it is. This is a lovely spot. Really nice, really peaceful. I can see the bridge now in the distance. The valley floor here is maybe 1/4 of a mile across, rising steeply on the left. The bridge comes off the higher ground, spans the valley. Looks to be made of brick, with many arches, maybe half a dozen or a dozen, and then the central span crosses the river. These steel girders, another old railway line, I'm guessing. I'll see if I can cross it. Well, I crossed the valley floor to reach the banking of the railway bridge. Scrambled up the banking through the trees, and thankfully there is a way across the bridge. It's a tarmac footpath. I think it must have been an old railway bridge, and now it's a cycleway, jogging path, dog walking path. So I've crossed to the other side, and now I'll retrace my steps back to Tadcaster, but on the opposite bank to where I was this morning. It's absolutely glorious today. The quality of the light, the stillness of the air. It's very, very calming. The river, as I said this morning, is high from the recent rain, but here it's just drifting along lazily. I can see quite away from the top of the bridge, almost 360, but there really isn't anything to see. I can just see a few houses at Boston Spa, away to the west. And to the east, towards Tadcaster, nothing much, just fields and trees. Just paused for a moment, had a quick cup of tea, and I'll head back. But honestly, on a day like this, I aren't in any rush to go anywhere. Just had a thrilling encounter with a red kite. I heard it. It was initially behind some trees. Bearing in mind I'm almost at canopy level up here, and it flew out from the trees at my level, hovered round for a few minutes, and then was being bothered by a crow that I think has seen it off. Just after crossing the bridge, there's a footpath on the right, down the steep banking, through the trees, taking me back down to the Riverside on my journey back to Tadcaster. I'm now close to the very southern edge of the Thorpe Arch trading estate, and there's the old military fence among the hedgerow and trees on my left, going off into the distance, marking what would have been the boundary of the military base. Walking on a proper concrete track that must also have been from those times. Again, as on my previous walks recently, there's an abundance of fruit and nuts from the trees. Just passed under a crabapple tree, the path's covered. A little while back there was a horse chestnut tree, the path once more covered. It seems to be my day for route finding problems. I was happily wandering along the concrete track, which I realised was going to take me into the industrial estate. So very soon after dropping down off the railway banking, need to stay to the right and walk along the top of the riverbank, along the edge of a ploughed field, which is on the left, and a steep bank covered in trees and scrub on the right, going down to the river. Some of the riverside paths I've walked on today seem very little used, which is surprising. Just passing through an area about waist height of Himalayan balsam, and my app tells me a daisy type plant called white heath aster. Hard going, uneven ground and a 20-foot drop down to a river in flood. I am taking it easy. I'm also now soaking wet from the knees down. At last, one of the estate concrete paths. I'm still finding my feet a little with the podcast and wondering what I should and shouldn't talk about. Mostly nature, the weather, the scenery. If I ever do get guests, I guess I'll be guided by them as to what we talk about. But when I'm on my own, it'll be those subjects and maybe a few updates about what's been happening in my life generally. Which is a long-winded way of bringing me around to saying that one of my dogs passed away at the weekend. She was a Labrador that I got from a rescue when she was 5 years old, and she was 12 and had to be euthanized last Saturday. And she was a beautiful dog, a faithful and devoted friend who loved not just me, but I think anybody she came into contact with, unconditionally, human or dogs. And for dog owners, you may understand the bond between human and dogs, I just think is remarkable. And she was the 9th dog in 30 years that I've had to sit with as she passed peacefully from this world. And people say to me, I could never do that, and if I did, I'd never want to do it again. But walking today and looking at the river and the fields and just briefly thinking about the fantastic times we'd had together, and as I say, that unconditional love and friendship that she showed me, I'm sure as hard as the experience of losing her is, it is something I, in all likelihood, will continue to do. In the field on the left a moment ago was a heron. It looks like grass that's been cut, and the heron was just standing until the tractor came round the corner and it did that long, slow, elegant take-off towards the river. I've just been thinking while I was walking, Tadcaster is a fantastic place to start walks from. There's a bus station in the centre of town and there's a free car park next to it, and from there you can go south on the River Wharfe towards its confluence with the hues. You can go north towards Boston Spa and Wetherby. You can go west towards Stutton and the Town Battlefield and Aberford, or you could go east on the Eber Way out towards York. It really has got a lot of choice, and if you like a glass of beer, there are the 3 breweries to choose from when you get back. Sam Smith's, John Smith's, and I'm not sure what the other one is now. It's changed hands quite a bit over the years. In the distance now, as the land rises, I can see the old church at Wig Hill, set on a small hill surrounded by trees, always with the old churches near rivers, they seem to be built in sensible places. I think a little further down the path moves away from the river, and there is a little section of road walking before picking up the Riverside path again nearer to Tadcaster. I've just realised what's making this difficult going, apart from the knee-deep tussocky grass. The river here is meandering quite wildly, left then right, never straight, and on the other bank the path seemed to cut across fields and was straight. Here the path hugs the bank, so you walk hundreds of yards and look across to your left and you can see where you've just walked, almost enclosed. It's gone round so wildly. But it's really quite dreamy. Now the sun's warmed everything up. The grass is still wet, but the birds are alive as if it was a spring day, as are the insects. Oh, here we go. Path disappears into the undergrowth again. And once more, I know there's a river a few feet to my right, but I can't for the life of me see it, for the ancient hawthorns and willows and the river here is flowing a little bit faster, and there's a fallen tree. And the water's running through and over. At last, somewhere to sit. I think I'll have my sandwiches. The path through the fields now seems to have been channelled by a fence, and there's a stile. I think I'll soon be back on the road. I'm high up the banking, I can see clearly now down to the water's edge, but there are some enormous dragonflies here. Absolutely beautiful. I haven't brought my binoculars, but I don't need them when they get close up. They're like a vivid blue, almost like a small bird. The sun, not high in the sky today, but as high as it's going to be, I think. But shining on the water, and the reflection is blinding. But this is a lovely spot. Little eddies and whirlpools in the river as it goes from a faster flowing section to a slower flowing section. That was a lovely place to stop for a break. I've crossed the stile, and thankfully the path is very pleasant now. It's along the edge of a grassy field, nice level walking. Across on the right I can see the backs of the grand houses in Newton Kyme. I never did see the paper mill. Maybe that's something that's long since gone. I'm now walking across Wig Hill Ings, and a little way ahead, just as the path leaves the riverbank for the road, there's an area on a really big U-bend where the river almost turns in on itself, and it's called the Wilfrey. What on earth? The Wilfrey. This is really nice. The river's slowed down again, and some old trees overhanging, and the reflections. It looks like a whole other world below water. A mirror of this one. It's beautiful. Not sure what all the commotion was on the other bank. It seemed to be a couple of seagulls chasing off a bunch of crows. Ah yes, there's a whole flock of seagulls in the field on the ground, and a couple of crows seem to have got in amongst it, causing quite a commotion for a few minutes. I've left the field now. I'm just on a bridge over a big drainage channel or a small stream. Looks like some sort of a lock mechanism. Maybe to keep the floodwaters out of the area beyond. But the path now crosses this and then goes uphill a little way and onto the road and then back towards Tadcaster. I've crossed the field and come out onto the road, past a farm on the right that's shown on the map as Eastdyke, and in the field on the left is shown as a medieval village of Eastdyke, although looking at it nothing remains. I've cleared the road and back into the fields just before I reach the outskirts of Tadcaster, over 2 stiles, and I think the path just goes down to the riverbank and then I'll follow it back to the centre. I can see the viaduct near Tadcaster that I passed under this morning, and this has, I have to say, been a first class walk. And if you are interested in what the Lower Wharfe Valley looks like as opposed to the grandeur of the Yorkshire Dales, I would highly recommend it. The path's now taken me through a field and over a series of stiles, and walking by the side of a 6-foot wire fence that looks as if it may be a paddock for horses. And from the complete silence almost that I experienced further up the river, I'm starting to hear the sounds of a small town school in the distance. Vehicles. Maybe the sound of an industrial noise, maybe coming from one of the breweries. No, the noise I can hear in the distance, of course, it's the weir that will pass this morning. Just about to pass under the second arch of the 2 left-hand arches of the viaduct. Not sure how many it is, but it's probably at least a dozen. The bank is quite steep at this side, and it's only 2 arches to the river, but at the far side, across the valley floor, there are 8 or 9 arches. Paths just brought me out between a house which is at the end of a lane coming out of Tadcaster, built in the 1790s. There's an old warehouse that seems to be closed down, and over the wall and through the trees, the weir. An inauspicious ending to what I have to say has been an absolutely fabulous walk. I've had a thoroughly good time and can't recommend going out walking in the fresh air highly enough. Even if you just walk round the block or to the shop, there is something goes on inside us physically and mentally that is nothing but good. Seems like a good place to end the walk. The school buses are all parked up, ready to go. Church is on the opposite bank. I think I'll soon be in a supermarket car park. So I'll end today's podcast. If you have enjoyed it, please share it, tell your friends about it, and if you can, join me next time. Cheerio.